Hello, and welcome to Association Transformation. I'm Elisa Pratt, Brewer Pratt Solutions, once again joined by my beloved co-host, Andrew Chamberlain, Consort Strategy. I'm going to intentionally try to be kinder to you, Andrew. I feel like some on the social media side have told me that I should be nicer to you and adopt a more open and kind-hearted approach to your thoughts and comments.
Well, I am a soft, sensitive soul. What can I say? Do you know?
Oh wait, did you type that? Did you send me those messages? Did you have your mom? Did you have your mom tweet me? Is that what happened?
I assure you, my mother would never ever tell you to go to ease up on me. I promise you that. You know, it's funny you should mention. I've not actually seen any tweets or LinkedIn posts about it, but a few people I've spoken to in the last week actually have said to me, "Oh, listen to your pod, and the dynamic between you two is really good." Now, once I got over the shock that somebody was listening to the pods,
all right. So, are we up to 7? No, maybe 12.
I was thinking, are they one of our 2 listeners in Belgium?
We're huge in Belgium. We're massive, huge in Belgium.
But yeah, and I thought, oh well, we must be doing something quite well. If people are some people are listening, and some people are even listening to the end of the podcast as well.
Whoa,
which I thought
all right,
was fantastic.
Don't jinx it. Let's just get to this topic. Don't over promise here. But you know, if anyone can take us to the next level, it's our guest today. I'm super excited. He's been named one of the 100 most influential people in staffing. I consider him the godfather, if you will, of executive search, specific to the nonprofit and association space. So, you know, little drum roll here. I am so excited to welcome to today's podcast, Bob Corlett, the founder and president of Staffing Advisors, the go-to guy when you need a change agent, a leader for the future, your new association executive. You know, boards turn to him, associations turn to him. And I think, like I said, I think he really brings us to a new level here. I mean, this is first class. When we have Bob Corlett, we are now legit.
We've made it. We're in the big leagues.
We've made it now. We've made it. So Bob, thank you so much for joining us and lowering your expectations and coming on Association Transformation. Thanks for bringing us to the big leagues. We're excited to be here with you.
Well, I'm delighted to be involved. Thanks so much for inviting me. And I feel a little bit like, is it Stuart Smiley? You know, boards turn to him and gosh darn it, people like him. So
yeah, exactly. I think that's your new tagline. Staffing Advisors, that's your new tagline.
It makes me feel better, just like Facebook makes everybody feel worse about themselves. Now I feel better about myself.
That's right. That's our job. Association Transformation, elevating the confidence level of the best in the association business, except Andrew.
I was going to say, except me.
Except Andrew. We don't want to inflate him too much, but you know, seriously, here at Association Transformation, we have been staff, we have been executive leaders, we have been consultants. We've seen pretty much every side of the nonprofit leadership equation. And these last weeks, months, you know, a year and a half, if you will, there's been a storm of change brought on by pandemic, social justice, boards that want to not only survive, but be different, younger leaders on boards who are asking tougher questions. And I'm so interested to watch what happens. There's announcements of new staff every day, and it seems like more than ever before. There are boards pulling the rug out from under their executives without notice. And I'm just so interested to hear your perspective on what the heck is going on and where nonprofit talent is headed. I mean, it does it seem as weird? Do things seem as crazy as they really are, or is it just what we perceive?
So it's a phenomenal time, and you know how in the IT business, software will come out, it'll exist for 6 months, and then companies will start to look for somebody with 10 years of experience with that software, right? Like, no, it's only existed 6 months. And so boards are looking and saying, okay, we want executive leadership that really knows how to lead post-pandemic. Well, you know.
Oh, great.
Okay. And so what's that mean? So the underlying issues are, you know, there's a bunch of them. So first there's business model questions, right? And, you've had Kevin Madden, you've talked about trade shows and these kinds of things, right? So the sources of revenue got wobbly and are maybe coming back to something more predictable, maybe.
Oh,
right?
knock on wood for that. Yeah.
All right. So you got that. And then you have what you just teed up earlier, which is the younger board members and frankly, younger staff starting to drive the train, particularly in areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? And organizations have done surveys saying, what should we do? And then there's a task force. But now we're kind of at the point where people are saying, and what are you going to deliver? What are you going to do, right? Actions, right? And then you get the whole fear of returning to the office, Fordo, right? And what's the office even do? What job does your office do? Is it just another inconvenient place to take a Zoom meeting, right? My wife's back in her office, I won't name the employer, and is taking Zoom meetings, and there are 3 people in separate offices down the same hall having a Zoom meeting, and what was the point of the office?
Yep.
Okay, so
Fordo. Okay.
yeah, so now go find a leader who can manage that. Boom.
Right. And who has experience managing that and is certified in post-pandemic leadership. Right.
10 years of experience and the certification. Exactly. Discuss.
So is this about, are we in a cycle of unrealistic expectations? I mean, is no leader set up to succeed with this set of circumstances? I mean, how can any new CEO, experienced or otherwise, really hope to achieve stability, let alone success?
Yeah. So we've all had this kind of collective experience-ish, but it's been different for our industries. Like each in associations, right? Each group of members had a different experience. Were you in a critical infrastructure where you never shut down? Were you in a setting where everybody got vaccinated? More of a healthcare kind of an arrangement. What happened in your industry or what happened in your profession, right? So there's all of that. There's what percent of your revenue came from events and that dynamic, right? And so you have this quote unquote collective experience, but everybody experienced it differently. But everybody knows something changed. Everybody knows there's this great rethink. They call it the great resignation. Is it going to turn out to be that? I don't know. But there's definitely a rethink. My favorite quote on it was from my friend Heather Bussing. She's an employment attorney with ADP. And she said, for employees, once you realized you weren't willing to die for your employer, you realized there were a bunch of other things you weren't willing to do for your employer either, right?
Right.
And so what do you want from work? And again, you need a CEO with 10 years of experience on a certification dealing with employees who are going through a great rethink. And what does that even mean? And what are the range of skills you need in your next, whether it's CEO or anybody on the senior leadership team? That's a whole different set of expectations than you had in, say, 2019, where you could say, we did 5% better than 2018, right?
I kind of want to go back. It's interesting you mentioned the Great Resignation, because I've actually I've read a few articles. I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't kind of I wasn't aware of it in that language. It's like you kind of knew there was a buzz going on. There was a hum of discontent, if you like, or reevaluation of one's circumstances, or as you say, what am I prepared to actually do, in my career. But it's interesting because you're the first person I've had a chance to sort of have a conversation with it about, and yeah, that kind of seems right to me when you say, well, it feels a little bit premature to be talking about the Great Resignation, because surely is that really happening yet? I mean, they might be thinking about it, but are they actually doing it? I mean, not losing people in droves at the moment, are we?
Well, you do see people not wanting to go back in droves to jobs that they took a break from. So for example, wait staff making $2.13 an hour are not rushing back in droves. Maybe they're working at an Amazon warehouse now, right? I don't really know a lot about that end of the labor market, but yeah. But I think people are not rushing back to jobs that weren't great, right?
Yeah, but obviously I'm talking within an association context.
And within associations, I think we are seeing leaders who've been in jobs 10 and 15 years who we couldn't dynamite out of their chair 3 years ago, right?
Right.
We could beg, we could plead, we could say, look at this amazing opportunity. They'd be like, no, we're happy. Now we're seeing some of those people willing to kick the tires, willing to consider something else, right? They've had a moment to say, maybe I want to break the pattern here in some way. But that's really individual. That is incredibly individual. It's not like everybody said, I need work-life balance, right? Some people said that. Some people made other choices. Some people gained confidence in their current leadership. Some people lost confidence in their current leadership. So that's why we're kind of framing it more like not me, but a lot of writers are talking about the great rethink, the reevaluation, the willing to consider other things. Does that turn into a wave of resignations? I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, and I think of how many organizations that I know of who got very lean during these last 20 months. The remaining staff, those who weren't furloughed, those who weren't downsized, took on a lot. And so they've been giving themselves even more so out of necessity, demand, the move to hybrid events, just trying to survive. And they see a market where everyone's hiring. And it's, as far as I understand it, and this is one of the things I wanted to chat with you about, it's a candidate's market.
Oh, yeah.
Given the vacancies, given the necessity, now that organizations are staffing back up, as I understand it, you can negotiate full remote, you can negotiate extra vacation, you can you're in the driver's seat if you're a experienced candidate with a good resume and a skill set that's appropriate for this new world.
I think everybody got the memo right around March or April that the power shifted to the candidates and they had choices. Now, you can't negotiate fully remote with every employer. You can negotiate fully remote with lots of employers.
Right.
So not every job is going to offer you everything you want, but there are plenty of places you could go where they're more flexible on a variety of things. How much hybrid, how much remote, how much pay, how much budget. There's a lot of things that can be negotiated now. And what's interesting is boards got that memo also. So the part of the collective experience that I think a lot of people did notice was the power shift, where candidates had more latitude to look for what they wanted. And frankly, turn down jobs. I heard about, thankfully we didn't run it, but I heard about another CEO search where 3 out of 4 candidates didn't want to advance from first to second round. Opted out.
Wow.
Chose something else. I was
well,
really glad that was.
I've heard about ghosting too, where you're one of the finalists and a final candidate just kind of disappears.
Really?
And employers have been doing that, sadly, for really a long time, of not getting back to a candidate that they weren't moving forward. Like the intention was there, but then they got busy. So yeah, huge power shift, no question.
So, I think about what I do. Working with boards quite a bit, helping them not only define their desired future, but manage their expectations. And I do some visioning workshops with boards that are about to enter executive searches to help them define what they're looking for, who they believe based on skill sets to help move them forward. Because they all want a unicorn, right? They all want someone who's affordable, has tons of experience, like you said, 10 years on a new software. They all want a unicorn. So setting those expectations, what advice would you have for a board who is about to undertake an executive search, given these new market circumstances?
We work with a lot of boards that have had a long-term CEO, 10, 15, 20, 30 years even, right? And, the board has never had the experience of doing a CEO search, right? But they also have never had the experience of what the CEO actually does, because what they see is the visible part. It's almost like an iceberg. They see the part that's visible to the board, and they don't see the, duck paddling underwater, or use the analogy you want, the bottom of the iceberg. So the reality of the CEO's day is opaque to a board. So one of the things we try to do in a search is make that more obvious to the board. What problems hit the CEO's desk that they solve that the board never even hears about? What problems got prevented that the board never even hears about, right? So trying to bring the reality of what the CEO actually does and make that visible to the board is really quite a trick. And in succession planning or in the work that you're doing with boards, getting a sense of how the leader interacts with other people on the senior leadership team. And so you could depersonalize it and say, what does the desk do? Work lands on the desk, work comes off the desk. What does the desk do? And most boards don't have a keen picture of that. So they tend to discuss attributes: self-starter, team player, good leader, right? This does not help you select the next person who can solve the problem of, my employees are terrified of returning to the office. What do I do?
Yeah.
My trade show revenues are off 35%. What do I do? So these discussion of attributes, swell guy, is really not going to get you to a leader who can actually solve the problems you actually have to get solved in that job.
No, I really like that the desk depersonalizing it, because I think over these last 18 months, maybe even longer, the personality traits of the board, whether they're adversarial with the leader, whether the leader, handled these last 18 months well or not. I think some of those personality elements have taken too strong of a hold in the relations between the CEOs and their boards. I can see that playing out in some less than positive ways. But what about those senior and you guys handle staffing searches across the full spectrum,
Yep.
From manager and director level all the way up to CEO. And I think that's such an important breadth of perspective. What about those staff? I won't give a level, but what about those staff who are itching to go explore greener grass, who say, I'm tired of being here. This organization isn't who I want to give all my time for. They don't this or that, but I'm thinking about leaving. What kind of reality check should those who are starting to get curious or starting to get hungry, what should they really know? Because I can't imagine the grass is as green as they might think it really is.
So it's very flattering to be considered for a new role, right? And
to be wanted, to be wooed.
Exactly. And you can fancy that, oh, what would I do with the extra pay I'd get in that job? Let me look at the 990 tax return and see what the last person in this job made after 20 years. I'll probably get that.
Oh, the poison of the 990 salary list.
And, all problems that someone else is, any work done by another human being looks easy, right? Oh, you can do that? Oh, that looks easy watching you do that. And now if I go to do it, it suddenly gets much harder, right? So when you go on an interview and someone else is describing a job to you that they are not personally doing, right? It can sound like, oh, I could do this, because some of the problems aren't as obvious, right? When you're talking to somebody who's actually in that job, it gets a little more real, a little more quickly. So if you're thinking about another job, and a lot of people are, and it's perfectly fine, you really want to get a beat on first the economics. Right? You cannot outrun bad economics. If they're in the buggy whip industry, beware. If their trend lines have been horrible, beware.
Hey, wait a minute, Andrew. One of Andrew's clients is the Buggy Whip Association. They're UK based, so it's...
They're one of my biggest clients, actually, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God. I've just signed a 5-year contract with them. What?
We'll just get paid up front. You should be fine.
He also works for Blockbuster, and
right. And I got shares in Kodak as well. That's right. Yeah.
That's all coming back, I'm sure. It's this Facebook thing that may not endure. I don't know. So now I've lost my train of thought.
No, you were saying
the economics.
Sorry. No, the financials of an organization is your first tell.
So Warren Buffett has this marvelous quote of, when a leadership team with a reputation for brilliance goes into a industry that has a reputation for bad economics, the industry's reputation survives. Right? You can't outrun bad economics, right? So just be careful about that. And then you really want to get a sense going into an enterprise of what really is the work style. I'm wary of language like cultural fit, because that tends to just be loaded with bias. But when you really look at the work style of how the work gets done, when you really look at how they collaborate, when you really look at like some organizations got way smarter about how they did work over the last couple of years. They're really building new ways of working together and new models for collaboration and new ways of kind of busting down silos. There are some organizations that did a really magnificent job pivoting into kind of whatever the future of work might look like. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of places that just try to replicate the office on Zoom, right? And they're just trying to like hodgepodge it together until they can drag everybody back in the office and do work the same old way they always did, right? Yeah. So you want to get that sense of, number one, are the economic style, and number two is the way they work, you know, the way you want to work. And everybody's work style is a little bit different. Some people like, you know, a little bit more creative friction. Some people like a little more harmony where decisions might take a little longer, right? You have to get a sense of kind of the economics, how the work gets done, and if that fits how you like to work. And then you can start to look at, you know, some of the stuff you want to negotiate with them. But it's not quite as simple as, oh, that would be the next title. I'm a director now. I will be a vice president there. Therefore, it is an excellent job opportunity for me. You got to kind of break free of the relentlessly climbing the title ladder.
Right. Well, you know, it's amazing. The things that you mentioned are fairly tactical. You know, it's about how this role is really going to, in a day-to-day context, going to be played out. You know, how am I going to deliver? And I think about those organizations who have, in an attempt to be different and in an attempt to evolve and respond to the realities of the last, 20, 24 months, have created new positions. What would your recommendations be? And this is obviously below the C-suite, but for those who are considering a role that didn't previously exist at an organization, that seems like some dangerous waters.
We do a lot of, in fact, most of what we're working on below the C-suite right now is newly created roles, right? So when we think about what's keeping search firms busy, there was a lot of backlog we had to get through of stuff they didn't hire in 2020, right?
Right.
But a lot of what we're working on isn't so much resignations as new roles. And the thing we ask employers to look at really carefully is, a year from today, 3 years from today, what impact does the person have to achieve, right? So underneath that, what competencies, what knowledge, skills, and abilities, does the person need to have to deliver on that? And what obstacles and challenges are going to be in their path? What's the riddle they solve in that job, right? Mm-hmm. So if you show me a staffing problem, I'm delighted, I'm engaged, I'm enthralled, can't wait, right? Mm-hmm. Show me an accounting problem, the blood drains from my head, I get stupid, I'm like, ugh, accounting, which is coincidentally why we outsourced accounting, right? So, but you really want to get a sense as the candidate and as the employer of what's the Rubik's Cube, what's the problem the person solves on the job. And as much as you can do in the interview sequence to actually experience that problem solving in the interview sequence, that's what gives comfort, confidence to the candidate and to the hiring manager that you have somebody who likes that problem, solves it in a way that's consistent with your level of resources, doesn't need a team of 32 to solve the problem, whatever it might be, a budget of $10 billion, right? And so dialing in the person who can solve the problem in the context you're actually in, with the budget you actually have, the team you actually have, that's really the key for these new roles. And it's still risky. New roles are still always going to be risky because by definition, there's no path to run on.
Right. Go ahead, Andrew.
Is that why you said, sorry, Lise, when you said on this dangerous waters with this, creation of new roles, is that what you mean by that?
I said that because I imagine as a candidate, you're going in and they're responding to the new buzzwords and the things their boards tell them they want to go in new directions or solve these challenges. Yeah. There's no blueprint, there's no track record. And Bob's describing a world of some pretty high level organizational awareness. And I don't know that many organizations actually have that or have had these detailed, thoughtful and intentional conversations about what the role will result in.
I get that. So I'm trying to understand what's the danger around it. I know there are dangers, but how
you take a job, a brand new role, and you're set up to fail because there's a lack of
Right.
those milestones, those measures of success. You're set up to achieve, you're set up to deliver on unrealistic expectations from the beginning. And I think, again, I'm thinking of it as a candidate. And I think those are some dangerous waters to jump into. You see it as greener grass, you see it as a challenge and a change, and you're stepping into a world in which you really are never going to be capable of meeting expectations or succeeding, because it's undefined, it's always changing, or it was never realistic to begin with.
Yeah. Okay.
And actually, as an employer, the way you make a job like that safer, Andrew, to your point, right? How do you make this dangerous thing safer to a candidate? Is if you can demonstrate you understand how hard the problem is. Like the more the employer or the board says, we understand just how hard this is, then the candidate isn't as worried that they'll have to teach you how hard this is in the midst of solving the hard problem. Explaining how they solve, that whole thing.
Yeah.
So sorry, so going back to your point, Lisa, about associations perhaps not being quite as sophisticated in terms of their approach to understanding, or translating, these challenges and these dangers. Are you suggesting that across the industry that we're not as proficient in in our approach to defining new roles, new candidate specs? Are you saying that that's something that we struggle with?
Absolutely. I think there are organizations that think it's a matter of identifying a vacancy or a need. They see an empty desk, or they see a desk that needs to be added. And then they build a job description. They go in Google, they go and copy and paste from some other people's job descriptions. They circulate it to a couple people and they put it out to the world. And it doesn't translate at all to some of the real things that Bob's talked about, not only alignment with organizational results, but culture, how the work gets done, the skill sets, and it doesn't define the expectations of the position over a realistic period of time.
And why are associations not that sophisticated in it?
Because they're not using staffing advisors. No, I'm just kidding.
I actually was going to say they're not using Bob, but all right, okay, let's just go with the generic staffing advisors. Okay.
Well, Bob has people too. He has people too. But no, I think there's a time and a place, and not every organization is a $50 million association or a $10 million organization. I mean, I work with many small associations who have to DIY the staffing. I've even conducted an executive search, and there are the right way to do it at a small and budget friendly level. And then there are times based on your needs that you need to raise your hand and say, we're out of our league, we need some help. And this is important enough of a position, or we're at an inflection point and we need some help. But, everybody can't do this on Indeed and LinkedIn Jobs.
No. But Bob, do you think, those going back up to thing is that the C-suite and the most senior role, the chief exec role, obviously, that does sit with the board to lead on either bringing in the expertise or to take the lead themselves. Do you think enough boards know what they don't know, and that they should be reaching out to somebody like yourself to advise them? Because a lot of the things, a lot of times I work with boards, that they suffer because they don't know necessarily to reach out and get and to benefit from external expertise. There's a presumption that, well, look, I'm sitting in this seat, therefore the onus of responsibility is on me to deliver, to recruit, appoint, motivate, support and appraise a chief executive, without actually reaching out and getting somebody like yourself to help them.
So all of hiring, not just C-suite, not just when a board is hiring, but all of hiring suffers from a preference for the comfortable. I am uncomfortable in so many areas of my life. Do I wear a mask in this setting or not? Do I fly? We're all uncomfortable, even more than we were 2 years ago, right? All the time. And so you seek comfort, you seek familiar, right? Well, therefore, if I'm on a board, I think the hiring should look like how I do it at my company, right? Well, that's not necessarily appropriate for this board kind of hiring, right? Or even a CEO hiring an executive team, you're going to tend to hire people who are comfortable and familiar, which leads to just systemic bias, right? Just these slight personal preferences, these slight things that make you more comfortable. Oh, this candidate went to my alma mater, therefore I'm a little more comfortable. Oh, this one worked at my former employer, I'm a little more comfortable. And when you stack it all up, you get systemic bias, right? So the problem is in all of hiring, and frankly, what you probably do in your work every day with your boards, from the magnificent buggy whip industry on down, right?
On down.
Yeah,
that's the pinnacle of my that's the pinnacle of my portfolio. That's right.
but you have to get a little uncomfortable. You have to ask some uncomfortable questions. You have to go learn stuff you didn't already know. You have to, the unknown unknowns, to quote Donald Rumsfeld, right? You have to look at things that aren't comfortable and familiar. And I got to tell you, that is the worst marketing pitch ever for an executive search firm.
Bob, let us handle it from here on out. Let us handle plugging you from here on out.
Here's Bob. He will make you uncomfortable. Oh, great. Thanks.
But I think, what I'm taking away from this, and I guess I wish it was easier to package some recommendations and some next steps and some advice for all the association executives and boards out there, but it's not easy. The landmines are more prevalent, are more varied, and maybe more than ever before. So to your original point, every organization, every person is going to be different. And these need to be individually focused, organizationally specific, and intentional examinations of need. And it's not going to be broad strokes. It's not going to be copy and paste. This isn't a templated hiring approach anymore. And I think in the end, associations will be better for that.
Just one quick thing that is a straightforward task you should do, right?
Oh, yes, please.
As you think about succession planning, as you think about the governance preparation work before a CEO retires, that sort of thing, is you definitely want to get the 3 a.m. list from the current leader, right? What problems do they worry about? What's the everyday thing they solve? A lot of boards aren't aware of what that checklist is. So that's a really straightforward thing. And you could delegate it, make the CEO do it now before they retire, right?
Yeah.
If you're not current with your strategic planning, get current with your strategic
planning. Amen.
Right? Because get current with your environmental scanning, get current with knowing what the issue set is the next person needs to solve. If I'm coming in to do a CEO transition and there is no strategic plan, there's no environmental scan, there's no sense of trend line, there's no, right? Then we have to gather all that, get that in front of the search committee for consideration. And frankly, that's the kind of thing that could have been, maintained thoroughly long before a CEO retires. Right. So
last question, if you, let's say an organization has some of that, but not all of it, and they know that they're heading into the need for a new exec, how much time, if they have the luxury of time, how far in advance should they begin that process?
It's going to be 6 or 7 months until the person's in the chair. It could even be 8 months, depending how much notice they give and how difficult the committee is to schedule, right? Don't have a committee that has too many members. Your scheduling alone will burn up months, right? Yeah. So you can make an executive search, you can get it done in 5 months, but almost no committee has the scheduling flexibility to pull that off, right? Yeah. The actual recruiting is not, that's 6 or 7 weeks, right? Maybe 8, but the actual recruiting window isn't that big, but the courtesy time to schedule the committee and give them their briefing materials and gather the information and come together and decide things just takes time.
Yeah. Well, and we can have a whole nother conversation about association professional versus industry expert. That can be the next time. That can be when we have Bob Corlett back. But thank you so much for joining us today, Bob. We really appreciate it. CEO and founder of Staffing Advisors. Thank you. You've elevated the association transformation discussion. I think the Buggy Whip Association and Andrew are better off for it. So thank you.
But don't worry, we're going to bring it back down next week, right? So don't be.
Oh yeah, I mean it's all downhill.
Little temporary elevation, right?
Right. Oh, goodness. Thank you so much for joining us today, Bob. And thank you to everyone for listening. You can find Association Transformation wherever you get your podcasts. And if you have any ideas for bringing up the level again, guests that may be out of our league, but willing to come and talk, you can email us at hello@yourconsort.com or tweet us at Association Transformation. Thanks again, Andrew. It was a pleasure. I appreciate
as always, it really was. Tell me more, Bob. Give me your number about getting another job, please.
Yeah. All right. Offline. Until next time, we'll say stay well and put your members and your mission first.